Okay, this is Algebra 1, test number 2, going through lesson 1.4, where we're using mental math. Problem number 1 on our study guide. It says when simplifying expression, you blank perform operations inside grouping symbols first. You have to choose between always, sometimes, and never. You look at your order of operations. That's what we're talking about. P stands for parentheses, then exponents, multiplication and division, finally addition and subtraction. Grouping symbols are parentheses, not just P for parentheses, but all grouping symbols. So you always perform operations inside of grouping symbols first. A as in always. Number 2, you're writing a fraction in simplest form. You have to find a number that goes into both 10 and 32. The number 2 does for sure, since they're both even numbers. So 2 times what, you have to ask yourself, is 10, and 2 times what is 32. 2 times 5 is 10, 2 times 16 is 32. You can cancel out 2 divided by 2, and you're left with 5 over 16. There's no number that you can multiply by that goes into both 5 and 16. Therefore, it's your simplest version. 3 says write 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 using an exponent. Count how many you got to make sure you're good. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. 10 to the 4th power. Number 4 says write 3.7 to the 3rd power in standard form. 3.7 to the 3rd power in standard form. So you're writing it times itself 3 times. 3.7 times 3.7 times 3.7 would be considered standard form, or if you went ahead and simplified it when you multiplied them by each other, 50.653. 0.0004 times 1.8. Multiply 4 times 18. 4 times 18 is going to give you the number 72. And then you have to move the decimal over. That's what I have here. You 1 time for this one, and then 1, 2, 3 times for that one. So from the decimal 72, you have to move it over 3 times. 1, 2, I'm sorry, 4, 3, 4 times. So it becomes 0.0072. An easy problem without a calculator. 5/9 plus 3/5. Remember, when you're adding and subtracting fractions, the bottom number has to be the same. So you have 5 over 9 plus 3/5. The smallest number may or may not be 90, but that's the closest one or the easiest one for me to grab. 90 they both go into. So you have to ask yourself, change the bottom number to 90, and ask yourself, what do I need to multiply 9 by to get 90? The answer is 10, so multiply the top number by the same 10. 5 times 10 is 50. Do the same thing to the second fraction. 5 times what gives you 90? The answer is 18. So multiply 18 times the top number 3 as well, and you get 54. Now the bottom number is the same, 90. Keep it the same. Add 50 and 54, and you get 104 over 90. They're even numbers for sure. So the number 2 goes into both of them. 2 times 52 on the top and 2 times 45 on the bottom. The 2's cancel. We're left with 52 over 45. You know there's no number that goes into these two, because the only number that, besides the fact that one's even and one's odd, the only numbers that go into 5s end in 5. And then number 8 says 7/8 minus 1/5. Again, the toughest part is making sure the denominator is the same. 40 may or may not be the smallest number they both go into. If you choose the wrong one, you just have to reduce at the end. But if you multiply 8 times 5, you get 40. 8 times 5, you get 40. Change the bottom number to 40. Ask yourself the question, what do I need to multiply 8 by to get 40? The answer is 5. So multiply 7 times the same number 5. You get 35. On the second fraction, you have to ask yourself, what do I have to multiply 5 by to get 40? The answer is 8. So multiply 1 by the same 8, and you're left with minus 8. So you have 35 over 40 minus 8 over 40. The bottom number is now the same, 40. And subtract 35 minus 8, and you get 27 over 40. The only numbers that go into 27 besides 1 are 3 and 9 and 27. So 27 over 40 is a simplified answer. Number 8, when you're multiplying and dividing, it's much simpler. It's much quicker. 2/9 times 1/2. You just multiply straight across. 2 times 1 over 9 times 2. 2 times 1 is 2. 9 times 2 is 18. Then simplify. The number 2 goes into both. 2 times 1 and 2 is 2, and 2 times 9 is 18. Cancel out 2 over 2. 1/9 you're left with as a simplified fraction. 4/8 divided by 5/3. Remember, when you're dividing fractions, that means to multiply by its reciprocal, and that's what we did here. From 5/3, notice it becomes 3/5. So 4/8, division becomes multiplication, and 5/3 becomes 3/5. Then do just like you did on number 8, multiply straight across. 4 times 3 is 12, 8 times 5 is 40. The number 4 goes into both numbers. 4 times 3 is 12, and 4 times 10 is 40. Cancel out 4 over 4. You're left with 3 over 10 as your simplified fraction. Number 10, you're writing it as a decimal. That says 1 over 8 or 1 divided by 8. So 1 divided by 8, if you didn't have a calculator, would look something like this. Blast from the past. Doesn't go into 1, but you have to put a decimal and make it 10. It goes into 10 one time, subtract 8 from it, and you're left with 2. You got to bring another 0 down. 8 goes into 22 times. Multiply it by 2. You're left with 16. Subtract it, you get 40. Bring another 0 down. It goes into 45 times. So 0.125 is your decimal. 0.125. But again, 10, all that says is 1 divided by 8. 0.125. This one says write as a fraction in simplest form. 0.75 is 75% or per 100. So 75 over 100 is the fraction form, which is the number 25 goes into both. 25 times 3 is 75, and 25 times 4 is 100. Cancel out 25 over 25, and you're left with 3 over 4. Number 12 says write as a percent. 0.38 written as a percent. Again, percent means per 100. The easiest way to make something a percent, just like making a percent into a decimal means to move it 2 times to the left, making a decimal into a percent means to move it 2 times to the right. So 0.38 becomes 38%. 1/3 is the same thing as 1 divided by 3. Again, a little long division for you. It starts repeating itself at 0.333 in continuous. And since you have 0.33, move your decimal over 2 spots, written as an integer without the decimal 3 carrying on. 33%. Number 4, greatest common factor. Factors are numbers that when you multiply by them, they give you the answer. So the factors of 10 would be 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. Each of those give us the number 10. What you want to do when you're finding greatest common factor, the easiest way is to find factors of the smallest number. 10's the smaller number is probably easier to say. 10 smaller than 58. So you know there's only 4 factors and you don't count 1 because it doesn't change anything. So you have the numbers 1, 5, 1, 2, 5, and 10. Is 58 even? Yes, it is. So we know 2 goes into it. See if 5 goes into it. No, it doesn't. 5 times nothing gives you 58. Neither does 10 times anything. So your greatest common factor, even though it's a small number, is 2. When you're finding least common multiple, now you're talking about counting by the numbers. So if you count by 20, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, and count by 15, 15, 30, 45, 60, the smallest one is what least means. Least common multiple, common means they're the same, 60. It's like greatest common factor, least common multiple, they're the same. They share those in common, 60. Number 16, the perimeter of the figure. Even if you can't remember the formula for perimeter, you know it's the same distance on on opposite sides. So 4 feet on the left is the same thing as the right. 2 feet on the bottom is the same thing as the top. If, however, you can remember the formula, it means 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. It doesn't matter if you call one length and the other one width. It doesn't matter which is which, as long as you don't mix up, as long as you don't call the same one twice. So 2 times the length, I call the length the longer one. That's usually easier for me. So 2 times 4 feet plus 2 times 2 feet is the width. 2 times 4 feet is 8 feet plus 2 times 2 feet is 4 feet, and 8 feet plus 4 feet is 12 feet for your perimeter. 17 says a car travels 408 miles in 7 hours. Find the unit rate. So unit rate, that's speed, everybody. That's R. When you're looking for a unit rate, that's the only one, if you look up there, that doesn't have a value attached to it. There's a number 408 for distance, and there's a number 7 for time. You have to understand that when you see a unit like miles, that means distance. And a unit like hours, that means time. So we're going to use the formula rate equals distance over time. The way you can remember this formula, it's not going to be provided. The way you could remember R equals D over T is because miles per hour, think of your car. Rate is your speed. Miles per hour is what your car says when you're riding in your car. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug in the values we have. In place of D or distance, 408 miles. In place of T or time, 7 hours. The one we don't know that doesn't have a value attached to it is rate. So we have 408 miles divided by 7 hours. When you divide miles by hours, they're going to stay miles over hours. And when you divide 408 by 7, you get 58.28. It says, however, at the end, rounded to the nearest tenth. The tenth is the decimal, the digit right after the decimal point. So rounded to the nearest number right after the decimal point. So you only want one number showing after the decimal point. So you want to look to the number directly to the right of 2. It's 8. If that number's 5 or more, it tells you to move that 2 up. If that number were 4 or lower, you would leave 2 alone. However, it is higher, so we're going to move it up. 58.3 miles per hour. Number 18 says an athlete runs a 200-meter course in 33.3 seconds. Find the average speed. Again, rate. Average speed. So we're looking for the same formula. Rate equals distance over time. In place of D, plug in your value for distance, 200 meters. In place of time, plug in your value for T, 33.3 seconds. Again, meters divided by seconds is going to stay the same. 200 divided by 33.3 is going to give you 6.0000, and it's going to, I think there's a 1 that shows up eventually somewhere. But again, it says round to the nearest tenth. So round to the nearest tenth, so you only want one digit after the decimal. So leave the first 0, look directly to the 1 right next to it. It is not 5 or greater, so 0 stays the same. Your unit rate is 6.0 meters per second. Always, even if it says the number 0, if something tells you to round to the nearest tenth, always include 0.0 for accuracy purposes. We'll look at accuracy further on in the course. Number 19 says write an algebraic expression for the phrase the product of m and 11. Product means to multiply. You see that term? Product, it means to multiply. So m times 11, or what's better, is probably 11m. The more concise you can write it, or the fewer things you can write in it, the less likely it is to be wrong. 2 times the sum of s and y. Times means multiply. Sum means add. So you can never, according to order of operations, even if you put s plus y first times 2, you'll never do s plus y first unless there's a parentheses around them. So you need to find the sum of the 2 before you multiply by 2. So s plus y in parentheses times 2, or notice even if you write it this way, 2 times s plus y would be correct. 21 says the quotient, that means to divide, of 10 times, that means multiply, and a number means a variable. So again, quotient means to divide, times means multiply. So 10 times x, or x times 10, divided by 8, or 10x over 8. 22, you had to evaluate u plus xy. When u's 14, x is 6, and y is 2. So in place of u, we're going to substitute in 14. In place of x, we're going to substitute in 6. And in place of y, we're going to substitute in 2. So 14 plus 6 times 2. All that is substituting in given values. Order of operations says you have to multiply before you add. So 6 times 2 is 12. Again, that's just multiplying based on order of operations. In the last step, you add 14 and 12, and you get 26, adding for order of operations. 23 says a pair of shoes costs $27.99. State sales tax is 8%. Use the formula C equals P plus RP to find the total cost of shoes, where C is the total cost, P is the price, and R is the sales tax rate. 8%, remember, you multiply by 8%, but you never multiply by a percentage. You have to change it to a decimal. You move the decimal over 2 times, it becomes 0.08. We're going to use the formula they gave us, C equals P plus RP. In place of P, we're going to plug in the cost, or the price, $27.99. We have to plug it in 2 times because there's 2 P values. We'll plug in our R, or our rate, which we said is 8%, which we changed to 0.08. So we have C, which is your total cost, equals $27.99 plus 0.08 times $27.99. All it is substituting in given values. Then multiply 0.08 times $27.99. You get 2.2392. That's multiplying order of operations. Add that to $27.99, and you get $30.2292. That's adding order of operations. Then, since we are working with money, you know that money doesn't go past the hundredths place. So rounding to the hundredths place, look at the number right after the second decimal, or right after the second digit after the decimal. It's 9. That number is 5 or greater. So 2 becomes, it goes up 1, it becomes 3.